And excellent. So people are just starting to come through. Thank you very much for joining us for our 7th Maggolee webinar. As we've got quite a few people joining us today. It's a really important topic, talking about Aboriginal employment in local government, and really looking forward to a great conversation with everybody today. So we'll just take some time to let everyone come through. Can't see faces, so you'll need to yell out and let us know what country you're on today. If you can do that, just let us know what council you might be with and country you're on. Great to see so many people joining us on this Friday, and we understand there might be people impacted by bushfires and so forth at the moment as well, and residual from the storms last week. So if people haven't been able to join us today, we are expecting numbers up over 100 today. So I'm just going to wait a few more moments, and then we'll respectfully open with an acknowledgement today. So being mindful of everybody's time today, I'll try and keep myself on track. Just a couple more moments. Once we get to the 40 mark, I'm going to hit the green light and we'll start today. Excellent. Hi, Courtney. G'day. Gunnar Kernailand. Thanks for joining us. Beautiful. All right, we're in. Nicole Finlay here from Reconciliation Victoria. Many of you are joining us, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that you're all meeting with us on today. I'm meeting with you on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung, and we have the great fortune of being operating on Wurundjeri country in at our Brunswick office, and I'm out at Greensborough office today. So wherever you are, thank you very much. Hello, Uncle Charles, who's joining us too from Victorian Aboriginal News Team. I'd like to respectfully acknowledge elders, past, present and emerging, and those many elders and community leaders who we work with and community members who we work with every day in the reconciliation space. The friendships and the partnerships mean a great deal to us, and without those friendships and partnerships, we don't have reconciliation. They are self-determined, those partnerships, by First Peoples, and we are highly respectful and acknowledge everybody that we work with. I'd also like to today just to mention that our team who are in the background with us today, we have Anna, who's on comms with us, and Claire, who's with us, and Emily and Jude. So if you have comments you'd like to share in the background today, please do. I've got Claire driving the PowerPoint presentation, so we'll head along to let you know where we're heading with our agenda today, and also to introduce you to our great guest speakers today. We have 3 amazing speakers who have spent some of them, Joanne Brunt, who's joining us from Latrobe City Council, has spent a very long time with local council and in the local government space, and is a very strong leader in Aboriginal employment. And we can't wait to be speaking further with Jo today. It's a real privilege to have Jo with us. We've also got Elijah Loutet, who's joining us from Moonee Valley City Council, and they've been doing some great work in at Moonee Valley over the years. So we'll be looking forward to hearing from Elijah in his engagement role, and also from Desiree Kilduff, who's joining us from Marybeck City Council and taken up a great employment officer role in there. So we'll be talking to all of them in a panel discussion shortly. Also providing you with a little bit of an update around our Maggolee updates. As many of you who've joined us before will know, Maggolee is not just a website. We run webinars like this. We run our workshops, our face-to-face workshops. We do a lot of sharing of information in the Maggolee space. It is definitely about local government and local governments and First Peoples being able to share the good work that they're doing in that platform. And we rely heavily on the content that you share with us on Maggolee. We'll also be bringing things into context with how does Maggolee and how does Aboriginal employment sit within the Victorian Aboriginal and local government strategy? What are some key actions that you can take away from today, practical actions that you can embed in your council? So we'll be sharing more about that shortly, and then wrapping things up towards the end appropriately. talking about National Reconciliation Week, the theme this year, and what preparations you might have in place. So it is an interactive conversation. This Maggolee workshop and webinar, sorry, is always about you being able to put comments in and questions, and we'll hope to address those along the way. So feel free to pop them in the chat. If we can move along to get going with our Maggolee updates for you. In terms of our interactions today, please pop the Mentimeter QR code here to click on your phones, and that just means you can put any comments in there and respond to the questions that we share with you today. So we'll move along from here once you've got your Mentimeter in, and we'll talk about, let's have a chat about Maggolee. For many of you, you'll have already checked in. We're getting some nice traffic for people visiting us in the Maggolee space. Here in this place is a Woiwurrung word. Fortunately, back in 2010, when we established this platform for local governments to share best practice and exchange ideas, we really were fortunate to have the endorsement of the Wurundjeri elders and gifting us that word Maggolee. So we're continuing to engage. We've engaged with the Wurundjeri aunties already this year in regards to our plans for Maggolee for the year ahead. Many of you will be starting your planning for the year ahead, and I hope that you've got your regular consultation happening with your traditional owners as well across the countries that your councils are operating on. We'll move along. Maggolee is obviously a strong supporter of the Victorian Aboriginal and Local Government Strategy, which was formerly known as the VELG-GAP, but this strategy is the new incarnation of that and will run through to 2026. The VELG strategy is all about local governments working in partnership with traditional owners and First Peoples to develop 5-year self-determination local action plans. So it's an exciting strategy. It fits really well with treaty negotiations and the truth-telling process, which is underway as well. So again, a very progressive strategy that no other local governments in any other states have. So we're really fortunate in Victoria to have this strategy. We'll head across and we'll ask there's a question we really wanted to pose. We've got 52 councils with us today, 52 council workers with us today. I'm curious to ask, did you know that your councils have a dedicated Maggolee webpage where you can put any strategies, any bits of information that you want to share further out to community and share your best practice? Did you know that you have a dedicated Maggolee page? We can upload anything that you want to that page. Your page might not be updated. And I've got a message from Uncle Charles saying you are by default muted. I'm not sure what that is. I think you might be referring. Oh, that's okay. Uncle, just to let you know that Desiree, Joe, and Elijah are coming in shortly into our panel. So just we're getting through some updates first, but thank you for your feedback. So then we'll head on to our next slide, and so I can get deeply into that conversation for you. We're heading in terms of where we're going for 2024, as I've mentioned, the webinars, workshops, and also you might not know about the Maggolee Self-Determination in Action in Local Government Awards. This is where we actually do ask councils to let us know about the strong partnerships that you have with the First Peoples communities that you're working with, and so we'll be opening up those award nominations in April. And last year we ran those awards for the first time, and we had 17 nominations come in from the 79 local councils across the state. So we do have an understanding that a lot of Victorian local governments are starting to understand what that shared decision-making and joint decision-making with communities looks like through the lens of strong partnerships. And so that's really what the Self-Determination Awards are about. And we'll be hosting those awards on Friday, 30th of May. So pop that date in your diary. And also when the awards open, those nominations will open in the beginning of April for you. Hi, Diane. Nice to get your comments in there. We'll head along. We do have another question here, and that's just in regards to that next face-to-face Maggolee workshop. We're hoping to also host in April. So I'd really like to, or even in late March, I'd really like to hear from your council if you would like to host one of those Maggolee workshops at your end of the world. We're either metro or regional. We love getting out to the regions, so just let us know if you'd like to host one. We'll head into our next slide if we can, team. And that's the bulk of the information that I've shared with you about those Maggolee Awards. And as you can see there, Mount Alexander Shire, Moonee Valley City Council, Knox City Council, and Hepburn Shire and Wyndham City Council were all award recipients last year. So we hope to have 10 awards this year, so growing it. And hi, Sharon. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide, team, if we can. Last year, we ran a survey with all local governments across Victoria, Maggolee survey, and we asked you where you were at in terms of your reconciliation interest and what sort of progress that you were making. Again, just reiterating, reconciliation is not possible without our strong partnerships and First Peoples determining what reconciliation looks like for them. Off the referendum, we know that reconciliation comes with conditions, and First Peoples will determine what reconciliation looks like for us going forward. So what we went out to local councils last year is to ask them really about their understanding of reconciliation. What is their interests? What sort of progress are they making with the relationships and partnerships they have? And we're sharing some of those findings with you today. So if we can move on to the next slide. So 55 out of 79 councils responded to our survey. I'll head into our next slide. And we asked them, what are your top 5 interests in, if we talk about reconciliation issues, what are your top 5 interests? Cultural safety, cultural awareness, cultural heritage, Aboriginal employment, and truth-telling. All of these components fit within the Aboriginal employment strategy, having a dedicated Aboriginal employment strategy. And we'll talk more today with Jo, who'll be able to share her expertise around dedicated Aboriginal employment programs and strategies. So it's great that all of those things intersect with a dedicated Aboriginal employment strategy. We'll head to the next slide. In the Aboriginal employment, when we were asking councils how many people that they're aware of, we knew that metro councils they've got a stronger Aboriginal workforces. We know that's what's been communicated to us, and more work needs to be done in the regions. We know that on average, most councils are employing 5 representatives or more, but this is an average. So we'll head into our next slide. If we look at where work needs to be done and interest levels in Aboriginal employment, in the respondents and the responses we got, we saw a higher interest from metro councils and a lower in the regional councils. We'll head to our next slide. And we're happy to share this PowerPoint with everybody post today's webinar. So we'll send this out to you so you can have all these stats at your disposal. If we talk about the Victorian Aboriginal and local government strategy and what are those economic participation, that in the 7 pillars of the strategy, one of the key pillars is economic participation. And one of the key things we see there under that pillar is to increase the number of Aboriginal employees through those career pathways and heading into increasing senior positions with pay parity in councils. So we know that that's a key objective of the VELGs up to 2026. So what are our councils asking ourselves? What are our councils doing to support that? So if we head into our next slide and we dig deeper into what actions and practical actions that the VELGs calls to councils to say, you can take carriage of these specific actions, having that regular communication with about local services, your local council services strategies and employment opportunities, regularly communicating those through to Aboriginal community partners, members, organisations and businesses as far as you can possibly share that information, and consistently, and being, obviously working with communities around the time frame that you distribute that information, around communities' time frames that you consult with them. So as we head into the actions about collaborating with Aboriginal communities, that ongoing design of your employment practices and how you develop your economic participation strategies, all of that, to do that in co-design with Aboriginal communities, and also monitoring council's performance against communities' expectations and feedback. They're really important actions, and they're all there in the VELGs being shared. Thanks, Em, for sharing the link to the strategy there. We'll head across to our next slide, because I'm sure that this is the important stuff, and this is where I wanted to take you, is to head into our discussion today, because we're sharing what Council has told us and presented to us in terms of where they think their performance is at, or what they know. So the respondents to our surveys have told us that, but now we really need to hear from community members themselves who are working in local government roles, who can tell us really how it is in there. So it's with great pleasure that I'm introducing Jo Brunt, who's at Latrobe City Council, who's coming onto the screen with us now. You've been sitting on the screen with us, Jo, but thank you very much for joining us today. And Elijah and Desiree, thank you for your time. Jo, if I could open our conversation, our panel discussion today, just with that information that has been shared with you. It's probably none of it's so much of a surprise to you in seeing that information, but I wondered if you could talk. You've been with local council, with Latrobe City Council, for a long time. You know this space and sector very well, but I wondered if you could talk about your role in with Latrobe, just to give context for the audience, and also the employment programs that you've run over the years for Latrobe.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jo Brunt. I'm a Gunai woman from Gippsland. I've been working at local government for far too long, 22 years in my role. I did have a 2-year stint where council seconded me over to the traditional owner group, where I was the acting CEO for 2 years. And then I've come back. So we've actually had the program now for 22 years. It was developed by an Aboriginal advisory committee that was formed in 1998. From that, there was an official subcommittee then from that advisory group, which is called the Braggalong Advisory Group, which is one of the clans in Gunai country. And that consisted of Aboriginal elders and members of the community. From that, there was a statement of intent. This is going way back before reconciliation plans were put into place. There was a statement of intent, and one of those intents were to increase Aboriginal employment within local government. Our program doesn't just do local government. We broker employment opportunities from Warragul to the border, the whole Gippsland region. So we've gone we're a little bit different and unique compared to other councils. So we don't just work within our local government council with employment. We employ a lot of people in different areas. We recruit for traditional owner groups. We partner with Aboriginal organisations. We do the recruitment. We help with career planning. We provide pre-employment training to participants. We utilise Aboriginal businesses to deliver our cultural competency-based training, our Yang Yang Nalu manual, which is Walking Together cultural competency-based manual. So is there anything else that you would like?
That's a lot in there, Jo, and you would have seen.
I wasn't sure. I'm thinking, you always got my first up, so.
No, that's okay. But you've seen that significant change over the years too, and you've offered that safety point for community to come into council, and created those roles. But What would you say in terms of that, if you're able to share some of the complexities for council in terms of their their engagement with the respective communities in the Latrobe area? What were some of the barriers that council was up against and has been up against over the years in engaging with community? If they hadn't had Aboriginal workers really leading this program, what would have been their key challenges?
I think, like I mentioned before, because the Aboriginal Advisory Committee or the Briarcalong Advisory Committee was advising council and they were listening, it made my position a lot easier when I was employed at council. I think there's always complexities, but I think that engagement happened well before I commenced. And I think that hard work that the elders and the community had done in pushing forward with that statement of intent. And it wasn't about, let's just tick the box. Let's do something realistic that's going to change the lives of some of our youth in the area. Some of the complexities at the start, I guess, local government changes over years. I've seen that. I've seen different councillors, different CEOs, etc. Priorities change. But I was very fortunate when I first started at local government that the CEO and the councillors were the main drivers of this as well. So I think that, the complexities that I see in other councils that I've worked with in the past is that the intentions coming from, community development or HR, where it needs to be driven from the top all the way through to the CEO, which gets distributed all the way down through the organisation.
They're really good points. And I think when we talk about those sort of career pathway programs and, there does seem to be, a lot of councils that are, bringing in kind of those pathway programs. But in terms of then elevating, moving, being able to move staff along into those senior roles. We see less of that in local councils. We aren't seeing those types of senior roles. But I wanted at this point, Joe, I'll come across to Elijah and Desiree because they're moving into, I guess, fairly some newly created roles as well in, having Aboriginal employment HR officers as well. Where you were saying at and having engagement officers like Elijah. As you say, you've got to have that commitment at the top of the organisation, but really in that implementation and doing and having the cultural lens across the engagement and also the HR strategies. That's probably been a critical piece missing as well. But if I could come across to Desiree and Elijah at this point, Desiree, can I come to you for a moment here with your role at Marybeck City Council? What were you able to quickly see in coming into council about what cultural lens you could bring to council and what they needed in there, that what was absent?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Nicole. So, firstly, I'd just like to introduce myself. So, my name is Desiree, and I'm a proud Noongar woman from the southwest of Western Australia. And I've been living and working on Wurundjeri country in community and employment programs for the last 4 years. So my role at Marybeck is the First Peoples Employment Officer. So I'm supporting the implementation of our First Peoples Employment Plan, which was a consultation and plan developed by Uncle Joel Wright. And yeah, so I basically drive the cultural education, competency, recruitment and retention pathways within council and employment support, in addition to supporting the establishment and our ongoing First Peoples working group. Works on workplace, changing the workplace and driving change. But yeah, so I wanted to say that firstly, what I'm going to say today is probably not something that our mob have been saying for quite some time. And that, is not already within our Aboriginal, our Victorian Aboriginal local government strategy. But yeah, I think, Nicole, in terms of your question, like that lens that I bring to that is the employment lens, like understanding from me when I was trying to get a job as a young fellow and then moving through those stages of my career, and myself having vision and seeking those pathways for leadership, and where I'm at now, and the barriers that I've faced throughout time. I am very new to local government, but I have been in the corporate space for and not-for-profit space for a few years. But I think most importantly that I can bring that cultural lens as well. So being able to understand what my morals and values are as an Aboriginal woman, but the community's values, and providing that cultural lens over what we're trying to do here in terms of employment, and what the community wants in terms of self-determination. Um, yeah.
Thanks. That's great, Desiree. And thank you for that lovely, thank you for introducing your role and what mob you're from. And thank you. I do want to dig into that engagement with community in terms of attracting community into roles with local government in potentially spaces and places that haven't always been culturally safe. And I guess when we talk about engagement with community and those improving some of those recruitment practices, I just wondered, I wanted to introduce Elijah in his role as First Peoples Engagement Officer at Moonee Valley, and to talk about, Elijah, are you playing a role within Moonee Valley of attracting candidates at Moonee Valley? Is that one of your engagement purposes there?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, so yeah, I just want to introduce myself as well. I'm Elijah Loudon. I'm a proud Pita Pita Morawali Karawali man. I was born and raised on Turrbal country, and grew up in my early years out in Kalkadoonga country in central West Queensland. And yeah, I've lived on Wurundjeri country for the past 15 years, working mostly in higher education. And yeah, I'm essentially, my role, I'm a First Peoples Community Engagement Officer. I'm responsible for identifying partnerships and developing opportunities that are relevant for community service providers, community members and leaders. I work really closely with my colleague Samantha Buckley, who is the council's reconciliation lead officer, and I support her and the council with implementing the council's reconciliation plan and initiatives. And yeah, I'm essentially new to local government. I've been here since been with Moonee Valley since August last year, so it's been about 6 months already. And yeah, I guess for me, it's a personal development opportunity. Like I said, I've worked mostly in higher education, so I've been quite siloed in my experience living in Melbourne and Nanam. And so for me, it's an opportunity, I guess, to connect with community services and community orgs, and actually meet some Aboriginal people that live in the local community, and find out what are the things that they want to see improved in the council, and what can I do to help that process. Yeah, so it's been a bit challenging. I think there are a lot of employment opportunities across council and in other services within the municipality or whatever, but I think the council still has a way to go in terms of their own personal development, and in just trying to understand what is the best way to approach employing Aboriginal people, and finding them meaningful and valuable work where they can feel supported on a cultural and safety level, and also have appropriate cultural supports, whether that be through mentors or a buddy system within council, or even an appropriate manager and reporting line. So
yeah,
I'll just keep on ranting if I don't stop.
No, and that's brilliant, Elijah, because you're really getting into that next that next part of the conversation I wanted to head into. And look, it's an enormous privilege to have sat in this space for many years, and as Joe has as well. You watch his journey of the last 20 years. We didn't see roles like yours, Elijah, or Desiree way back, and Joe, you've really helped La Trobe navigate some of those real challenges that you've been able to see, and not only La Trobe, but your further sphere of influence with other employers in your region and across the La Trobe region. Could you talk about some of the things that you have seen as possibly the things that not only councils but similarly employers just tend to get tend to get wrong in whether it's at their recruitment end or whether it's at the retention end of keeping staff on. What are some of the things if you were giving councils advice, which you do all the time, what have been some of the key bits of advice that you've had to give to La Trobe and other employers along the way? And it has felt like a constant that it seems like it's nearly every org gets this wrong, if you like. Is there's things you can part with us about those things? Sorry, Jo, you're on mute.
Sorry. In my role, I work with a lot of infrastructure projects. We have, the renewables happening down here in this space. We have lots of contracts where obviously part of the social procurement policy is to employ Aboriginal people. What people get wrong is they come into the area, they assume that we have qualified engineers in the area, they don't do the right engagement with the community. That engagement is one of the key elements. Generally, when they come to our program, we refine the positions down, we go through the org structure, we work out what the position or what the demand is with the community, because we've been quite connected to the community. I am part of the community. But I think one of the key things is that their expectations are too high. They don't have the flexible work arrangements. They haven't actually done that cultural competency-based training. They don't have any buddy mentor systems set up. But one of the main themes is, the expectation that they have that, they've come into the community and they don't know. So having formed those relationships or some understanding without a ticker box.
They're great. Yeah. Great points, Jo. And I think because that's, those assumptions they bring with these assumptions, there's lack of engagement, expectations too high, lack of flexibility, and they're not putting appropriate buddies or mentor systems in place. I wonder if I could just head to... Sorry, another one. Yeah.
Just another thing too is those relationships are the most important, and these people come into town, they want to employ people, and even in local government, I've had different general managers over the years, I've had different CEOs who have different priorities. It's me re-educating all the time to different people who come into the region. But I think that in relation to the recruitment aspect as well, is, like I said, that relationship is one of the most key elements that you've got to have with the community. Don't have a relationship, you're not going to be able to form any partnerships.
And that re-education part, when you see such transition in local government, that must be really tiresome. Would you say that having a dedicated Aboriginal employment program, kind of it means limits that having to re-educate all the time, or do you just feel like that that employment strategy ends up being loaded on the Aboriginal worker? What's your view about that?
I think it does get loaded onto the Aboriginal worker, and that's something that I'm telling. I've had lots of changes in my team, within the organisation, which most organisations do. After 22 years, especially in local government, if your local government hasn't changed in 22 years, all your staff, I'd be wondering what's going on. What good employee you are, I'll come and work for you. What was the question again? Sorry.
So does a dedicated Aboriginal employment strategy reduce that load a bit in having to constantly re-educate?
It's re-educating. Our team has grown, so it's re-educating the team. I've got the learning and development, I've got the recruitment team. It's about, educating them continuously, because technically, if I educated right, I wouldn't have a job. Yeah. Because they would know how to recruit, use the different approaches, etc. So similar to a RAP, I always say to people who have got a reconciliation action plan, and I challenge this all the time, that it's always the Aboriginal liaison officers or the engagement officers who have to deliver on the RAP. And I get asked that question sometimes in local government, and if people who know me, some people on the screen might know me, I'm Jo Blunt, not Jo Brunt. So when someone comes to me and wants to know what to do with their reconciliation action plan, or can I do something for the RAP, I turn around and say, I don't have to reconciliate with myself. This plan is your organisation's plan, and you will have to learn how to do this. It's not the reliability. You can't rely on Aboriginal staff to develop these strategies. They're the ones who are supporting you through this.
That's exactly it. And that's, and its whole purpose is about spreading that load and making reconciliation everyone's business. And I think that's probably the big education piece, Auntie. And really, I'd love to come across to Elijah and Desiree's views on those things that that Jo has shared with us there about that those assumptions, the lack of engagement, this constant need to educate, lack of flexibility, and those things. I'd love to get from your the time in local government that you've both been in there, Desiree and Elijah. I'll come to you, Desiree, from the employment perspective. Are these things that you would that be fair to say you see these in the time that you've been in local government, that they are seem to be some of the issues that pop up as well in the employment space for you?
Yeah, definitely. What I see a lot is barriers in accessibility, and really the space of those colonial and systematic barriers that have been in place to have new young people come through local government, and especially when we're looking at it from a Western perspective of what is viable experience, what is the education that we're looking for, or the leadership from that, again, that Western perspective, and how we can shift that and look at our roles in co-design and our position descriptions, and making sure they're not only attractive to First Peoples, but making sure that there's that clarification about what this job actually entails, it being accessible, and being able to understand what that role is going to look like. I think looking into that space, and how can we utilize our traditional knowledge or knowledge in community and apply that to the roles that we have, and break down those walls. I think a lot of it is to do around policies and strategies of how we not only attract candidates, but when we have those candidates come through, how are we managing for them putting their best foot forward and making sure that they're supported through that process and having a good experience in council. So if they're not getting this job, hey, come back, we'll we might have another job for you, or let's work with you and see if there's any other positions that we can match you to. And just working around that application and interview support and what council's looking for, because it's not often clear what council's looking for when you're walking through the door. So I think just really focusing on those systematic barriers.
Yeah, and effectively we hear the word a fair bit about decolonizing those processes and practices, and seeing the willingness of councils to actually invest in that change and that systemic change. And Desiree, you mentioned Uncle Joel Wright had written that Aboriginal employment strategy for Marybeck. Do you find that a useful tool? Because then you're obviously having to articulate that that strategy and that decolonisation process effectively. Has that strategy been of benefit to your council?
Yeah, definitely. Like, as soon as I picked that plan up, I thought, this is innovative, and like, let's get it done, in terms of like, there's some new things that we can work with here, and that I can see us, that we've already hit most of those objectives in terms of progressing them or achieving those objectives. And really, there's been a lot of change in a little period of time, which the council has been really receptive to. But I think that that before I got in, having those relations with community were very strong. So I came into a place where there was that positive perspective, and there was that input from community and our First Nations Advisory Committee. They had a lot to do with the implementation of my role, as well as Uncle Joel Wright. And so there was a lot of people involved in that. So I think there's a lot to work from. I use that in my work every day, and our working group, which is Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander employees, that get together, and we nut out the plan, and what we can do with this, and what are some things that are priorities to us, and we're getting through that at the moment, which is fantastic.
Excellent. Thanks. Desiree, I'm going to take a question across to Elijah now, because what's clear is that those identified roles that each of you have, they present real advantages to a council, but also sometimes they impact, safety for that load, and for yourselves in having to do that education piece across all different areas of business. But Elijah, I wondered if you're able to talk a little bit about what those identified roles are for some councils that might not completely be in the loop, and what are some key considerations that councils need to have in bringing identified roles into their sphere and into their councils.
Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, so a bit in the Moonee Valley Council, there's my role, and there's another role, the Cultural Safety Manager, which are the two identified roles. The other one is the Reconciliation Lead, and now currently there's a non-Aboriginal person doing that role. But Sam, who is doing that role, has done a lot of work. It's been very challenging for her, and I find her approach to be very genuine and very honest. So I have a lot of time for Sam, and I'm always, and part of the reason why I'm still working here is actually because of the support that Sam provides me. Now, when I took the role, I thought that there'd be another Aboriginal support officer or mentor or buddy. Now that has since changed, and so I'm currently now the only openly identifying Aboriginal person working there. So that's obviously created a lot of personal challenges for me. But I've been able to sort of reach out and lean on the support from other members of the community, like yourself, Nicole, Rec Vic, and Uncle Charles Parkin has been very helpful. I also work really closely with the aunties, Auntie Gail and Auntie Julianne and Auntie Di, and they've all been really supportive. So I guess for me, some of the considerations that like I need to take is that obviously if the council asks me to do particular things, now I might be capable of doing that type of work, and I might feel culturally safe, and I can actually deliver on that. But then there are some things that I may not be able to, and I need to be really honest about that. And when I'm in a situation where I'm a bit out of my depth, it's more appropriate to sort of lean on additional support outside and maybe get an external consult in who has that strength and culture and lived experience and wisdom to be able to handle particularly challenging aspects of the work we do. So I think it's about, I guess, having to educate myself in the role, but also working with council to, it's all a learning experience for both of us, like council staff and myself. So, I have to have courage to call them out on the things that they are doing right and the things that they are doing wrong. And really be honest about what I need to do my role effectively. And that sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So I have to put myself out there and yarn with other mob and get advice and support. And it's just a process, right? Like change doesn't happen overnight, and a lot of the council staff, they're only beginning their journeys in understanding, what's a culturally appropriate and safe workplace. So I think really what's important for a council organisation is to understand what the purpose is of having an Aboriginal employee work for them, and then you can then provide, create like a culturally safe workforce. And I think that has to happen first from like the CEO top down, cultural awareness training across the board, so everyone's sort of at an adequate level to then employ an Aboriginal person, and for them to be able to, I guess, identify what the work that they're doing is, and make it meaningful and impactful, and make sure that they feel like they're resourced and they can actually achieve their goals. And that is a heavy cultural load to put on one person. So I like to, I've used the advice that Uncle Charles gave me, and that's like, leverage expertise and experience from other people in council, and look at the allies you have, and find champions to help carry that load. And yeah, that's just a little bit I can share for now.
Thanks, Elijah. And and that is a massive load, and we have heard that a lot around, in terms of employment and recruitment and the retention part. I'd really love to tap into that a bit more, because Uncle's given that really savvy advice in terms of, yes, looking to that expertise within the workforce, but the sphere of the change that you're loaded with isn't just in the internal cultural change of the organisation. It really it feathers much further out to your whole municipalities and your shire about what change is made there. And Joe, I'd love it if we could hi, Adrian's joining us from Knox City Council. He's yelling out too. Joe, I wondered if you could talk to this, because you really honed in on those relationships. And I guess over the years, with all the you've got great service providers and Aboriginal orgs that are in, the Latrobe region, and how also they, the engagement, your relationships with them and council's relationships with those services, and the expertise that's in there has helped you over the years to kind of do that co-design process and make those changes and those systemic changes in your council. Can you talk about those relationships with community and community orgs, businesses that have influenced some of that change in your council, how you've made that work? It's a big question, but it does talk to that relationship piece, so you're not massively loaded. You're on mute again, Joe. Sorry.
Sorry, I have 2 toy poodles and I'm scared that they're going to bark while someone's talking.
Yes, I got 2 too.
They haven't barked all morning, and I think it's going to happen anytime soon.
So you just get antsy about it, they start going off.
Yeah, I know, and that's what start talking, they'll start going off, someone will be walking past.
Yeah.
Could you just refine that question down?
Yeah, I'll come back just in terms of reducing that load, because that expectation about, the one person in the identified role having to do all this change internally. And yes, we can reach into council's expertise, but in terms of those relationships with community and Aboriginal community orgs, services, content experts, how critical are they in reducing the load of the Aboriginal worker, and creating that change in councils?
I think they're the most important. Similar to what you said before, though, I use the sounding board of all the community because I do the whole region, not just Latrobe. So I've got different mobs to work with all the time, and working with those service providers who have Aboriginal people working in those. We get together as a working, I get a catch up every now and then, and we actually, we debrief a lot of things. We share those ideas, and then we bring that back to our own council. So it's about those relationships that I have. So we currently have an Indigenous, we've just been successful. We get our funding from Commonwealth if everyone's asking as well. So we've got some funding out of the ISAP, and we had to co-design this particular program, which was great. So we've got, we interviewed something like 80 businesses, and we worked with every single Aboriginal organisation within the region. So we're doing that in partnership, and we co-designed what the program is going to look like in the next 4 years. So I think that's going to help me a lot, because I'm going to have those people on our advisory. Oh, it's not an advisory committee, it's a committee that oversees the co-design. And I think that's going to be fantastic for me, because I'm going to be sharing some of the experiences, what I'm doing, and they're going to be also monitoring the program, but also providing me some critical advice in relation to what they need in their communities, but what they also need in their organisations, in relation to their career development plans.
Joe, how do you include council staff in those briefing sessions with Aboriginal services and partners to try and build their capacity? And because that's another critical role that you play in continuing to build their capacity and doing that education piece for the workforce. Is that something you feel like you've really had to focus on, so that again, it's you're not carrying the entire load, that their capacities building with staff and the relationships are built with the council staff?
Yes, so so we have, I'm in the HR department. We have our liaison officer that is based in our community development department, and then we also have our 1,000 Days program. They're the Aboriginal identified programs that we have within council. That's not just all the council staff. We have, I think last time I looked, 12 Aboriginal staff working in the organisation. I've just offloaded the cultural competency-based training to learning and development with the traditional owner group now. Like, I don't have to facilitate that anymore. That's your job. You facilitate that across the organisation. I'll be there. I'll be helped support it, but I'm not the doer. So I've offloaded that off to the learning and development team. So it's offloading things. But once again, the Reconciliation Action Plan and the objectives in the Reconciliation Action Plan, if the local government staff actually delivered on those, understood that, they would have the relationship, they would have the understanding, and they would be able to deliver on their KPI. So or on their objectives. So for me, I just think it's really important that you offload some of those responsibilities to those departments as well.
And your council really, it stepped up. It saw the absolute, importance of you taking up that leadership role, and you've earned that well and truly over the years. And was it a process to kind of get them to understand? You've walked into a CEO role, that acting CEO role in there. Did you, I mean, what kind of got them, what made that transition? Because you would be one of the first councils, I would say, across the state that has actually put an Aboriginal person into a CEO role. That would is that what you've heard along the way?
Yeah. So it happened a little bit by accident. So there was an MOU. We have an MOU with our traditional owner group in relation to certain, things. And I could see the traditional owner group was growing. And we had, something like 17 NRM workers and 7 rangers, and then we're opening a civil construction crew. We had our cultural heritage. I went over as the GM, and within 2 weeks, they've actually asked me to help out. So I did. And the council were quite happy to do that. At the start, they had trouble understanding it. But then when they realised that I had someone who worked with me, for me, and it was good because it was succession planning, because I've been at council for 22 years. I don't plan on being here for another 22 years. So it's about that succession planning as well. So I was hoping that someone else could step up in my position. I was happy to go back to my TO group, and I was in a bit of trouble, and that's why they've asked me to come along and help put policies back into place and do some stuff with my TO group, which I found rewarding as well.
Oh, look, and that tells us something, that they were prepared. They've listened, and they've seen the importance of leadership, Aboriginal leadership in there. So hats off to Latrobe, and like to yourself, Joe. It's a real testament to the hard work that you've done over the years with them, and unrelenting. Now, as we're just getting to a little bit of the closure of our conversation, I just wondered, before we do wrap up our panel conversation, just from each of you, if we could maybe start with Desiree, then Elijah, and then Joe to complete. I'd love, just in terms of a reflection, if you're wanting to sort of part with a comment or advice to the local governments that are joining us today, just in terms of the work they're doing in Aboriginal employment, what would be a parting comment that you'd like to share?
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. I think overall, my experience over the last 7 months working at Marybeck City Council was that I noticed that I went in there, and they had a statement of commitment to Wurundjeri Woiwurrung, and then the First Peoples Employment Plan, and I'd met with the CEO and executive team, and I could see that it really was a top-down approach. Like these people were fully on board. So just going into that space and, having them say, this is a massive job for one person, so we know that it's not your job to fix what's wrong here. It's just to contribute and to support. And so going into that, I think was a really comforting experience for me, because I can just know that I had that support, and then two, that they're not expecting the world from me, which is a good experience, and lets me work in a way that, being able to prioritize the things that the community wants, and our First Peoples employment, First Peoples working group internally, what they want, and work at a at a pace, and have that self-determination on that level as well, which feels really good. And I would just probably want to say, honestly, like I think I've touched on most points.
Thanks.
So I would just say, sorry, just to say, like, continue having, like, sitting in that discomfort if you are a council here today, like having those uncomfortable conversations, whether it is with community or with your internal Aboriginal staff. And please include all Aboriginal staff in these conversations who are willing to be a part of these conversations, because not just your identified roles, because these policies and these strategies that we're doing impact all of us, and those to come as well.
Yeah, great points there, Desiree. Thank you. And Elijah, across to you.
Thank you. I guess, like what Desiree said, having councils, definitely take on the journey of like reconciliation and employing Aboriginal people, with having that like sort of top-down approach with cultural safety and awareness. Everyone's buying in, everyone understands what you're trying to achieve. Really clear understanding of what those roles are, those identified roles are, what their responsibilities are. That you employ people that the roles are to their strengths and to the community needs, and also make sure that's like not just tokenistic work, and also being those providing like Aboriginal staff with support, mentors, buddies. It always helps if you have an Aboriginal advisory group, and also building and maintaining like real genuine relationships with TOs, and respecting what their wishes are, and that there is cultural protocol to everything, and just be aware of council staff to be aware of that all Aboriginal people have to carry a cultural load, and to help Aboriginal people where you can, and really try and understand what that means. And I guess I think for most people, most staff working in the councils, it's about being genuine with your approach to working with Aboriginal people, and actually taking on that responsibility of educating and listening and learning from Aboriginal people as well, and not just taking Aboriginal people for granted. I mean, non-Aboriginal people always expect Aboriginal people to do stuff for free. Like, I grew up playing the Yudaki since I was a kid, and I don't know how many schools I was sent around to play for, just as a kid, and then coming into being an adult. I'll always step up and support anyone in the community who needs someone to play. But also, if someone's asking me to do something, like, be able to understand what that means. And, now, like, I won't do everything for free. Now I expect to be paid for, like any Aboriginal person should be paid for their time. Yeah. And just, don't come to an Aboriginal person and expecting them to know what to do,
the whole encyclopedia.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Elijah, sorry, I'm just conscious that I'm nearly on 1:30, and I think we almost need to do a part 2 of today's conversation. So,
Sure.
and I think that we may have lost Jo on. I think she's dropped out of off our screen. So I just really want to extend my thank you to both of you for today, as well as Jo. And I would love to come back to look. There's been some really great points imparted with us today, and I do think it warrants a much deeper conversation. So hopefully, in our Maggolee workshop, we can enter into this conversation a bit more. And also, yeah, we're getting suggestions to go for part 2. So we'll round back into this conversation further. Thanks for today, Desiree, Elijah, and if Jo is somewhere in the background, much thanks for your time today. Excellent. And Uncle Charles yelled out to say thanks as well. There are lots of lovely comments coming in. As we head out, I'm just going to quickly just drop in just a couple of bits of information. So for those of you who are heading into NRW week planning, just to keep an eye out, we will be having another Maggolee webinar heading into about April, just so to help with that planning. So thank you all so much for your time today. It was great to have everybody's company. We've just received some really great advice today and information and tips on how to do things better. And this is all part of the reconciliation journey. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time and your comments. So we'll see you next time, and look forward to staying in touch on National Rec Week. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
Bye.